Chapter 8 is about content management. We have already looked at project management issues, and now we will look at how we manage content in an ICTD intervention. Very simply put, content is the stuff in your website, the printed material inside a book. Without it, there is no website. Without content, there is no video, there is no audio, there is only an empty channel. So, content is the message, it is the stuff, and it is the most important element of ICTD activities. Content consists of text, that is written material, audio, that is sound bites, which could be pre-recorded materials or live recordings, video, which is a visual, a moving television footage. For example, what you are seeing right now is a visual along with audio, and this is accompanied by the print textbook that is available with you. Okay. We also call film as a visual moving film footage. Then we use graphics in content, which consists of graphs, charts, tables, photographs and other still pictures. Or we may use animation, moving, graphic, animated objects, similar in a way to cartoons. These are the various types of content that would be the stuff of your website, that would be the stuff of your video program, or the stuff even of a message that goes on the mobile phone as a multimedia message. But when we begin to look at content and content development and content management, major question that comes up is, should we adopt wholesale what is available, because there is a lot of content available on the internet and a lot of content available if we only choose to look around and look for it. Is the best thing for us to do to adopt what exists already, taking the necessary permissions to do so, or shall we adapt? That means, shall we modify existing content with additional materials to enhance the quality, to enhance relevance to our community, or shall we create afresh what it is that we want to say? The difference between adopting, adapting, creating is not merely a question of relevance to a local community or a question of local languages, it is also a question of costs. Adopting is the easiest, modifying is the next in terms of difficulty, and creation is the most difficult, whether in terms of creation or in terms of cost. Adopting is the cheapest, adapting costs a little more, creating costs much more. When we are going to develop content, particularly for ICTD interventions, there are many questions to be asked, and I will read these questions off to you because they serve as a checklist which helps us to determine whether or not we adopt, adapt or create fresh content. For instance, first question, who are the users? What are their needs? What are their profiles in terms of age, gender, literacy, education levels, media exposure? Who is the content suited for? Is it suited for adults or children? Who is involved in the creation of content? What biases, social, cultural, economic, religious or linguistic and gender wise does the content address? Is the content realistic in terms of community experience? For instance, is it relevant in terms of women's experiences? Is it locally developed? And what share, for instance, do women have in developing their own content? How is the content organized? Is it meeting information needs? Is it accurate? Is it up to date? How has the technology been modified to make it easy for users to use, hear and understand the content? Is individual or group use built in and encouraged? Is locally produced content encouraged and used? Does the content encourage, promote and facilitate interactivity and feedback? What support systems do we need to deliver the content, such as ground level facilitators and other materials that have been included. For example, if I talk to you through this video channel, but you do not have the textbook or have no access to it in front of you because the facilities for you to get it have not been made, then we are missing an important support system. Similarly, what mechanisms are in place for correction or modification of the content? If we begin to look at content as content developed by one set of people for another set, the questions that I raised earlier are the ones that must be answered. However, in today's Web 2.0 design applications and in free and open source software, we begin to look at what is known as user generated content. Earlier I spoke to you about blogs and wikis, about social network sites where people can create their own materials, put their own photographs and create their own digital stories for distribution over the net. One way that is emerging quickly and with great popularity is the use of social networking to generate one's own content, so that I may wish to put all my photographs for public display on the internet. Anyone can access it, and I can do it myself sitting at my own computer and creating my own content. So it doesn't require now people from somewhere else making content for individuals. These can be locally and individually produced, and they are particularly the current mode of content development. However, when we begin to look at content and content development, whether we are going to adopt, adapt or create, the issues of ethics, copyrights and intellectual property become extremely important. The purpose of ethics in development is to ensure that common principles are observed in the day-to-day practice of development work. These common principles are respect for the user, respect for people, informed consent, that is, that we always take the consent of the users when engaging with them in development work, and ultimately that we do whatever we do is not designed to injure or hurt the user in any way. Within the realm, of course, of ICTD, it is also necessary to keep in mind and to rigorously observe what are critical aspects of copyright and intellectual property rights, or IPR. And I will very quickly, in a very short summary, introduce you to these two definitions of copyright and IPR, and I would recommend that you look at the official website of the World Intellectual Property Organization, or WIPO, WIPO, for further information. Within copyrights and IPR, intellectual property is divided into two categories: industrial property, that is inventions or patents, trademarks, industrial designs and geographic indications of source. Copyright, which is the area that we are really concerned with, refers to literary and artistic work such as novels, poems and plays, films, musical works, artistic works such as drawings, paintings, photographs, sculptures, architectural designs. Rights related to copyright include those of performing artists in their performances, producers of CDs and phonograms in their recordings, and those of broadcasters in their radio and TV programs. It is important to remember these and to respect them, because failure to respect them is equal to what is known as plagiarism or a violation of copyright. While ethics are values and require that intellectual property be respected and the author or inventor receive the benefits from his or her property, in the case of intellectual property, the law is backed by the power of the state to compel. So, if we violate a law relating to the protection of intellectual property, the courts of the land have the power to punish and coerce compensation of loss in case of violation. particularly in the use of software applications. It is very clear that free and open source software has a clear advantage because it is not proprietary. Remember, I told you in chapter 2 about proprietary and open source software. Proprietary software is protected by intellectual property rights law. Free and open source software then has a clear advantage because it is free to use and free of the copyright restraints. Within the realm of free and open source copyright, we begin to look at what has come to be known as copyleft, or a set of licenses under a Creative Commons which provide a method for software or documentation to be modified, shared and distributed, provided it remains free. This does not necessarily mean that an author does not get credit for the work that he or she has done. It just means that the software or documentation may be shared, distributed, although the original author is always acknowledged within a Creative Commons regime. And it is important to remember these particular issues and the fact that this primer is released under a Creative Commons license, so have also been other products of the UN-APCICT. So the points to remember with reference to content development is that this is a critical area often overlooked and given less importance in ICTD interventions, although it is the most important. Current developments allow us to use applications such as FOSS, free and open source software, Web 2 and mobile telephony to address some of the inherent weaknesses of earlier efforts of content generation. They offer flexible responses to some of the chronic challenges that earlier efforts faced, such as localization and relevance. Intellectual property refers to creations of the mind for which property rights are recognized. Emerging from the ICT revolution are efforts to create a more flexible copyright model, replacing all rights reserved with some rights reserved, that is the Creative Commons umbrella, to make content more compatible with the full potential of the internet that allows for innovation and problem solving, and by also sharing information and building upon creative works. Ethics requires that intellectual property be respected and that the author or inventor receives the benefit from his or her property. The exercise given here is basically very common in many a university and higher education scenario. What are the issues that are involved if pirated software has been found to be used? What are the steps and what are the issues of ethics and IPR that faculty are confronted with, and what are the steps that they should take to address these issues? If you were the student who has copied and was caught for plagiarism, what are the consequences you would expect? If you were a faculty member who was accused of copying or using pirated software, what are the consequences you would expect? Think about these questions. Again, no hard and fast answers. Situation specific responses will emerge. There is no right answer, there is no wrong answer. However, the ethics remain is that authors must be given rights for what they have created on their own.